I am from the Innovation Office at the Ministry of the Attorney General. There is still something called innovation in this government. It's kind of a miracle. I'm digging it. We're the people that have been doing a lot of work over the last few years to change systems internally that are barriers to some of the external services, but also put things online and some of the other stuff that you've seen. So I'm going to take you through what we've done so far and what you can expect to see soon. And then for any of the criminal practitioners in the room, there's a bit of a teaser for something that's coming over the next couple of years as well. So what have we done? We have civil and family claims online now. This started a couple years ago with the initiating claims in civil. We've since added some defense documents, and then we stopped to make some enhancements. There were a lot of complaints about the way that we had created the system initially around user profiles, authentication issues. There are still some issues there that we're working through, but we stopped to enhance it quite a bit to give it a better experience. And we are working on the next wave now, which will include some things like jury notices and some of the other stuff that you guys have been asking for, which you'll see in a moment. Family claims online is the new one. I don't think that was here the last time I talked to you, but we started with divorces. So for joint divorces in Ontario, you can do that top to bottom online. We're the second jurisdiction in the world to do this. It's pretty cool. So in Ontario now, you can sue people online, you can get divorced online. We're going for all the glamorous stuff out of the gate. We also put some provincial offenses online, which you'll see at the bottom there. It's a pretty straightforward service, but the routine provincial offenses, so the speeding ticket on the way to the cottage, that is generally administered by the municipalities. It's their court. They're the people that take care of that, and they've all done their own thing. So we have a very kind of fractured landscape when it comes to how you handle your provincial offenses, whether there are early resolution processes, how you pay. Can you pay online? Do you have to mail it in? Do you have to drive back to Belleville to dispute it? All that fun stuff. So we have built a provincially consistent online tool that will allow you to look up, figure out whether you've paid or not, ask for payment, ask for the early resolution services if the municipality is offering them, and it encourages the municipalities, there's some skin in the game for them here, to get on board with the online payment options and the early resolution solutions. So we're giving people one window into those municipalities. There is still some variation in how the municipalities handle it on the other side of that. The other thing I'm really excited about is our partnership with Clio. So we are building guided pathways for family court forms, something that we've seen done in other jurisdictions. The people at Continuing Legal Education Ontario did a great job with the Steps to Justice website. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely check it out. It's the first time that judges, lawyers, ministry staff, a bunch of not-for-profits got into a room and agreed on language and steps for how to do things in the family court system. I don't know that those groups have ever agreed on anything, especially the language for things, but it's very plain language, it's great. And we're extending that. So you get to the end of this journey, it tells you what you want as a divorce. It will actually now hand you off to a divorce wizard that just asks you questions. Who are you? Do you have kids? Do you own property? And at the end of all that, it says, what you need from the court in Ontario is called a simple divorce. Here are the forms pre-populated. Here are the things you still need to do to get signed, to go take to this person, to get notarized. Here are the appropriate places to file that, and if we've built the online filing service for it, it will link right into that online filing service to get them started. So it starts with the triage on Steps to Justice. It goes on to helping you populate all the right forms and telling you what it is the courts call that thing that you want to do, and then hands you seamlessly into our service so that you can interact online with the court. We're trying to create a top-to-bottom service. And because Clio did such a good job on Steps, we asked them to help with the guided pathways. They're also once removed from government, so they can do things faster and more cheaply than we can. So we will be keeping step with them, adding more and more online filing services on the family side. The digital hearing workspace. Does anybody here practicing commercial court here in Toronto? Excellent. You might hate me right now. We tried a little proof of concept with the commercial court in Toronto for something we're calling the digital hearing workspace. So this is an online tool that, in addition to filing, lets you upload all of the other documents that you need to get through court events. So the binders, the books, anything that you might want to enter as evidence, you just put it all there, and it organizes it for you and lets you share it when the time is right with the other parties to the matter, as well as the court, so that the judge can see it. It's basically online shared drives or SharePoint or a shared space of some kind, like a big organized Dropbox. But everybody gets to contribute who's allowed to contribute. Everybody can see everything in real time, and the judge can pre-read and prep and come into that thing ready to go. When you get into the room, you log into it, it's all there. Everybody's looking at exactly the same set of records, organized in exactly the same way and referring to the same documents. There's no discrepancy between the version I have and the version you have versus what was filed with the court. The goal for this thing, when connected to our online filing service, is to have a one-stop shop for all the digital documents and artifacts. The only thing that it can't handle right now is multimedia evidence, and we're working on it. But this was a test. It's a 6-month test. It's running right now. It goes until August. It hasn't been without its bumps and scrapes. We have had some challenges with it, and we are reprofiling the rest of the test right now. We're whittling down the scope of it a little just to get some more usable information. But we're really excited. This is the beginning of the end of paper. So I talked about this last year as an idea we had. This year we're actually doing it with one court in Toronto, and we're going to take those findings and turn them into something that we can blow out to the rest of the province. So this will be probably the biggest change that you see coming to the courts over the next year, year and a half, depending on which practice area you're in. We've also been hard at work on basic infrastructure things. So Wi-Fi is now in 74 of 75 of the base courthouses. The holdout is 361 University, and that's because there's some ongoing construction there and we can't get in to install anything until they're done that. But if you're litigating in one of the base courthouses, you have access to Wi-Fi now. Anybody using it? Excellent. What was that?
I said I'm not sure if it's secure, and I know a lot of lawyers where I'm from say they're not using it because they're just very hesitant about security.
I can answer that question for you. So there are 3 different kinds of Wi-Fi in courthouses. We put one there for staff and for judges to use. They just automatically connect to that network. We have one called OG Guest, Ontario Government Guest. This is the one that you pre-register for. There's a form. You get this weird password that drives you insane and you can't change it. We're working on that as well. Those 2, very secure. They run on the government backbone. It is a very protected network. I'd say bank-grade security is where we're at with that. So those are there for you. The OG Guest service is there for you to use, and it is primarily in the areas where you do the business of the court. So it's in courtrooms, it's in chambers, it's in conference spaces. It's not in the hallways. It'll leak through to the hallways from courtrooms, but it's not meant to be out in the hallways. That's where we have what we call the public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi, not secure, totally unprotected, and much, much slower than the other 2 services. We've throttled its bandwidth to make sure that the stuff you're using in court gets preference on the bandwidth highway. So the public one, you can use it as well. It's just a lot slower.
Yeah. 2 questions. One, is it available in our libraries? And can it be? And is it the same password for every courthouse, or do you have a different one for every location?
So the password is the same for every courthouse. Once you have a guest profile, you can use that in any courthouse where we've installed Wi-Fi, and that's 74 of the 75 base courthouses. There's satellites as well that we haven't gotten to yet, and that's in the planning stages. And your other question was law libraries. So where the law library is also used as a meeting space, we put it in because there are things happening there, like case conferences in some cases, stuff like that. We put it there. Otherwise, we considered it off limits. We didn't install it in those places. And the goal was never to cover 100% of the courthouse. This is far more expensive than we ever thought it would be. It's costing us millions of dollars to run the Wi-Fi network and cost millions to install in some of those old buildings. So we had to make some tough choices. But it is there in all the courtrooms, chambers, and generally all the areas where you meet with judges and stuff. I had a question back here first.
Yeah, just a comment. I've noticed with the public Wi-Fi that it won't give access to my apps. It only works for browsers, so I don't receive any email when I want it. I don't know if that's leading to my phone and laptop, or if it's just the feature of the public Wi-Fi.
We should talk. This is the second time I've heard that. So at the end of this, there's an email address. Get in touch with me. I want to figure this one out. Yeah, I don't know the answer. Yeah.
So how do we sign into OG Guest?
So when you go to the OG guest page, there are instructions for signing in if you just need it for the day. It's a quick registration process. If you want an account that lasts for 6 months, and every 6 months we'll ask you to re-register to make sure that you're still coming into courthouses, then there is an email address, and you'll see it on posters all over the courthouse. You just send an email to that email address. They'll tell you what information they need, and they'll issue your account within 48 hours. Yeah. Okay, we're also working on something called the electronic scheduling program, and this one's been underway for the better part of 4 years now. Lots of pilots, lots of work, lots of iteration. Scheduling trials, JPTs, bail, stuff like that in criminal courts is as much art as it is science, and coding for the art was hard. So we tested it in 6 different places when everything was said and done. Lots of flavor, got it right, and it is finally rolling out. So if you're in Toronto, it's coming to trial coordination offices in Toronto right now. It's not something you'll see or feel or ever have to interact with, but the trial coordinators you're talking to are going through a bit of a learning curve, so bear with them. It's happening in the 3 borough courthouses right now. They're cutting over to that, and it'll be happening at Jarvis Old City Hall and, forgetting the third, College Park. It'll be happening at those in about a month. And from there, we're spreading it out to the rest of the province. This was important because it is the first time we have a provincially consistent scheduling tool and a one-stop shop for all of the schedule information. That means on the other side of this deployment, we can start having chats with the court about creative ways to make this data available to people. So if you've been on OntarioCourtDates.ca, you know the information is 1, 24 hours out of date, and 2, only for the next day. That's because of the way we do scheduling today. This changes the game completely and can turn that into a real-time, more forward-thinking site for folks like you.
Questions into the
It is.
mic, please?
The question was, are we planning to do that in the SCJ as well? The answer is we'd love for the SCJ to reuse the tool. We need to talk to them about it and find out whether they're interested. Yeah. We are also working on a new video strategy. So this has been notionally approved in our budget. There's a little more homework to do before we get the money for it. But essentially, we'd like to ramp up use of video between the correctional facilities and courthouses for pretrial events, eventually getting to the point where we're at about 90% of all pretrial events happening by video. So it's not video first or video by default. It's just video makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases, so let's do that. It helps save time and money. The other thing that we've been slowly rolling out is remote defense access. Anybody in the room using that to video into your correctional facility and talk to in-custody accused? Excellent. So remote defense access lets you do just that from your laptop. There is a one-time registration. There's no cost for the service. We install something on your laptop or give you the package to do that, and it lets you schedule time and securely video into your in-custody accused for the meetings that you need to have with them so that you don't need to go to the correctional facility. They don't need to come to one of our courthouses. You can be sitting in your office. They can be sitting in a suite somewhere in the correctional facility. This is available now, and it's available for, I think, 6 different big correctional facilities at this point. So there's a specific email address for that one if you want to register. I had a question over here.
Just are you going to expand that into all the jails eventually? Is that okay?
Ultimately, yes. Yeah, that is the goal, to get it into all jails.
Questions to be captured on, for video after really need to be either repeated or
I'll repeat them all.
The mic's at the far end of the room, I think that's why no one's going forward. Or you can repeat.
I can repeat them all if that's easier, guys. I got one more coming to me.
On this platform, can you share your screen? Because something that's a big challenge for me as a defense lawyer is reviewing statements and surveillance videos with my in-custodies because I'm not allowed to bring a laptop into the jail.
Yes, you can. It's got a side-by-side view so that you can look at documents and other things while you're still looking at each other.
Can I turn off the video so I don't have to use my phone?
I think we wish we all could. I don't know the answer to that one, actually. I've never been asked if you can turn off the video. And here's the what's new. So this is what's coming over the next little while. We've seen a slight shift in the government's priorities, but it is not a dramatic shift for the work that we've been working through over the last few years. So digital still remains a priority. There was a news release the other day about the new digital service standard the government is applying. That means that we have set criteria, set standards, and set ways of doing things digitally now that we all need to adhere to. For me, that's the online services. And we've already been partnered with that team. So we've been building things out in the way that they like to see them. So more digital, lots happening faster. Citizen-centered. So this is something that I would say the ministry and the justice system at large haven't traditionally been great at. There are lots of groups that sit around the justice system that are good at advocating for the people who actually interact, but it's not like I go to a courthouse and ask somebody who's getting a divorce what they want in an online divorce tool. What this says is we should be doing that. We should be engaging with the end user to find out what's working, what's not working, how it went, how we could have improved that experience, what word didn't make sense on the page. It's really designing things with the end user in mind. So in some cases, you're the end user. We're building services for you guys to interact with us online. In some cases, that's the actual person who's going through whatever the court matter is. There's also a big push for evidence-based decision-making and, of course, process optimization, or lean process optimization. So you'll start to see some of that happening as well. And this is just, the only thing I'll point out here is that there's a link at the bottom there, and you guys can all have this presentation if you don't already, but the link at the bottom is where you can see our new digital service standard, and this applies generally to everything government is doing digitally now. / digital standard. Okay, and what's underway? So from a digital first services perspective, we are still working on jury modernization. This is the process from the time somebody is added to the list as a potential juror up to the time where they're in the courthouse. Today it's very manual, very paper-based, crossing people out on a spreadsheet, putting stars next to them if you need to call them back, putting a dot if you never got a hold of them. It's not awesome for the people in our provincial jury center or the people in the courthouses. This is an online system that takes care of all of that, including the questionnaire and eventually excusals and deferrals. So we'd like to build that tool for the people of Ontario to use. Because they're interacting with us digitally, it's all being taken care of digitally in the back end. It's a lot lower on the administration side for us. And this right now touches, I want to say it's 920,000 people a year that we send the questionnaires to get the jurors that we actually need, or to get the right number of people flowing through the courthouse to pick those jurors. Civil claims online will be expanding. So we have initiating and defending documents. We're now adding the jury's piece, the jury notices, the remaining defense documents, and for the first time, third-party documents. So the third-party claims, cross-claims, counterclaims, all that fun stuff, those are all going to be added over the next couple months. We've expanded the joint divorce online to include simple, and we're talking now about what comes after that. So joint and simple you can do online. We need to do more. And this is the fun one. This is the last slide I have, and then you get to ask me a bunch of questions. So the criminal justice digital design. Over the last 4 years, we have been quietly beavering away in the background on tuning up a bunch of systems that make criminal justice hum. From a ministry perspective, our friends on the policing side and our friends on the correction side have been doing the same thing. This was all about building out discrete functions that do certain things. So we built a scheduling tool. We have a case management system. They have a records management system for tracking who they've arrested. All these things have basically the same information in them, used for different purposes. We've hit a tipping point now where all of this stuff is mature enough to start connecting it together. And by connecting it together, we can start to share the information, the data elements, the documents, and the digital evidence seamlessly without driving a CD over, without somebody going and sitting in court and swearing to the document. There's like endless potential here, because once it's captured, it should just move itself through the system the way that it needs to, instead of everybody rekeying. If we can get that right, and that's a good 2.5, 3 years worth of work that we've already started on, then we end up with, I'm going to call it like a data lake of sorts, where everything is held, where all those data elements exist, where all those documents exist, where all that evidence exists, and we can start building tailored user interfaces for, and this is primarily criminal right now, but for crowns, for defense counsel, for LAO, for judges, for our courthouse staff, for police. Tailored user interfaces for them to peek into all of that and see what they're allowed to see. so that they know what's going on today, what's going on tomorrow, how is this case progressing. When I can find out when officer so-and-so is available to witness and schedule a court event accordingly. You can see when you need to be in court 5 months in advance, what's been scheduled, what's missing. So this becomes the one-stop shop for interacting with the criminal justice system. One login, anything that you want to file can go through there, any evidence you want to upload can go through that, anything we already know about your life and interactions with the criminal courts is available for you to dig into, including digital files, digital case files. So that is the vision. I've painted a pretty picture, and I come to these things and I talk about what we're doing, and then 4 years later I say I'm still working on it. And 4 years later, we will still be working on this, but you will start to see some significant progress in about 1.5 years. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions you guys have.
I just have a comment, which is that although all of these things are great, I think there's already a lot of tools in place that court staff just don't have the right culture to accept. For example, there's always this need in my courthouse to have original signatures on an approved as to form and content draft order, which is really annoying when it's a satellite court and the lawyers are in different cities and we're purulating this form all over the place that really we could just fax in.
So let me ask a question. There are things we do because we've always done it that way, and there are things we do because we're required to under legislation or regulation or rules of court procedure. Do you know what the root of this one is? Is it written in a rule somewhere? Has anybody ever seen it, or are we just doing it?
I think we're just doing it.
Fantastic. I am going to make that stop happening. You need to email me that one too.
No more original signatures on anything.
So, in all honesty, we have been through a ton of legislation and acts that govern the business of the court. So like the Criminal Code, the Evidence Act, the Courts of Justice Act, the rules of civil, family, and criminal procedure. And we can find the occasional reference to what size paper, what bond, what weight, what spacing, what margins in some of them. The only place we're finding the need for ink on the page is when it calls for something to be commissioned or notarized. And it's the Commissioners Act and the Notaries Act that's driving that, and we're working on that right now. I can't find anything else that calls for ink on the page. So if you guys can find it for me, I am happy to take that on. Part of our digital first commitment that I talked about earlier is to remove all of the barriers to digital service, and physical signatures are one of those things. You shouldn't need ink on the page anymore.
John Kurchenko, Central South. Is there sort of a plan to allow people, like I know that there's, let's say, the family stuff that's going through digitally, but let's say something was already done the old-fashioned way, and now a user just wants to get something, for instance, a certificate of divorce. You had the divorce order, now your client says, look, you know, I'm getting remarried next month and I need this certificate. They can't go, they're asking you to do it. And myself in Hamilton, I know that I'm going to invest about 4 hours of sitting in a courthouse or sending somebody to sit there to physically get this document. Is there any movement to be able to like order that up through the courthouse and say, listen, you know, here's a court file, here's my payment online, can you just do it and send it to me as an email with all the stamps and everything?
So yes, generally, no specifically. So we don't actually have a project plan in place to deal with something like that right now, but we have been having the discussions about the geography of the court system and this provincial court that operates municipally, and where that can be a barrier and why it's a barrier, and how both call centers and online services can help with those routine things. And the divorce certificate is the example we use over and over again. So I think you can expect to see some change there. I just don't have a date or a project plan to go with that one yet.
Hi there, Jonathan Collings from Lanark County. Question, when it comes, one issue that I've come across, when it comes to old files, closed files, archived files in the Superior Court specifically. For example, in Ottawa, I'll go And even if nothing has happened in 3 months, it's archived and sent off site somewhere, some magical facility, central in Brampton or Mississauga or somewhere. And then it takes several weeks, a $60 fee to get it back. And now I know in private practice there's a move towards scanning all of our closed files so they're easily accessible when people come back 5 years later. Is there any chance that Her Majesty might consider doing that as well to make it easier for us?
Yeah, actually there is. So what I talked about with the criminal justice digital design and what I talked about with online services, roughly translatable. So the portal that we're working toward, or the portals that we're working toward for users for criminal justice, eventually we're going to get there with civil and family as well. But the goal right now is to put it all online. Once it's received online, it's automatically attached to our case tracking system. So we have it available digitally if it was filed digitally. But eventually, we'll give you a window to peek in and just pull out the things that you filed with us digitally, reuse them, and never have to query them from the storage facility, which is in Cooksville, just outside of Mississauga. You are absolutely right. We're spending a ton of money on paper storage, and we're spending even more on paper movement. And Ottawa happens to be one of the sites that I'm most familiar with. They are crushed under the weight of storage in their hallways at this point, which is why they're shipping stuff out to Cooksville right away.
6 weeks.
Yeah. They just have no physical space for it anymore. There's so much paper being generated by courts, more and more, year over year. So it's time. We got to tear the Band-Aid off and make this stuff electronic.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for
You're
another
welcome.
entertaining and illuminating presentation.